I would say between spring of 2024 and today, I probably had 200 panic attacks, maybe, or more, maybe more. Like, no joke, maybe more.
Hey friends, my name is Dr. Robert Duff. I am a neuropsychologist, a self-help author, and a podcast host. And today I'm going to do a reaction that's a little bit different than ones I've done before. This is a reaction to a video from Epic Homesteading. He's Kevin. He's the Epic gardener. I started following him, I think in 2020. It was, during the height of COVID. And that's when I really started getting into plants, which if you look behind me, there's lots of houseplants here. I think the first video I found him on was like how to find cheap pots for plants, like going to thrift stores and drilling holes in them and stuff like that. And I've been following him ever since. And during that time, he's really, really blown up. And this video is about some mental health struggles that he shares. And so I wanted to actually take the moment to talk about it and react to it. Once I started seeing, where he was going with the video, I stopped it. And so I haven't seen the whole thing yet. I'm not sure exactly all that he shares, but I wanted to kind of just give my impressions and react to what he's talking about, because I think it's a really, really good and interesting topic, and more people need to talk about this stuff. All right, so let's jump in.
No, the title of this video is not clickbait. I'm actually considering leaving the homestead, at least part-time. And this is why. For those of you who are followers of this channel since the beginning, that would be 5 years now. That's crazy to me. 5 years. I'm 38. That's still over an eighth of my entire life. So I want to take you on a bit of a personal journey. I usually don't talk about personal life stuff with you guys, and I try to have a lot of fun on my channels and in general separate that part out. But I think in this video and on this channel, it's time to share a little bit more with you guys. I feel comfortable about it. And so sit back and enjoy, maybe pour some tea. If you care to listen to me ramble about my own life, you don't have to. And I'll talk about it because I think it's an interesting lesson learned for the sort of perils of work-life balance and mixing in personal life with work and all that kind of stuff. So the brief
Couple things off the top. One, I'm sure the comments, I haven't looked at them, I'm sure they are massively supportive because people enjoy the vulnerability and the realness, I think, more than ever, because there's so much fake shit out there. And so the vulnerability, the realness, and behind the scenes, sort of pulling the curtain back, very interesting stuff. So proud of Kevin for doing this. I don't know him personally, but alas. And then the other thing is he's going to talk about work-life balance and how a lot of stuff that happens in your life can become work. And that's something that I've noticed in, my own life, where every time a new thing happens, it's like, oh, how can we turn this into something? How can we potentially monetize this? How can we make this into content? And that pull is always there. So it turns into like a force that sucks away, is dramatic, not sucks away the joy from your life, but it like takes things that are very authentic and innocent and then turns them into businessy things, which can be great. It can also be hard at times.
Brief history of the Epic Homesteading channel is, of course, there's Epic Gardening. We're almost at 4 million subscribers over there. That's been my main time gig since 2016 when I quit my job to do it full time. And obviously it took off further than I...
Just for context, that's also kind of when I started making content. Well, previously I had like kind of ASMR stuff. That was like 2012 and on, but 2016, I think, is when I started the podcast, if I'm not mistaken. So it's been interesting to see people that I kind of started around the same time as, grow so much. I have not grown that much, which is okay, but it's very impressive.
Obviously, we need to make money. That's part of what being a company is, but it's not something I've ever tried to maximize relative to the impact that we try to have with the home gardener. Because of what it's done for my life, I've seen what it's done for the people on our team's lives who have started to garden now as they started to work at Epic, but also you watching. I've gotten literal letters from dozens of you at this point over the years saying how gardening literally saved your life. Like you were going to compost yourself, let's just put it that way, and somehow you stumbled across our videos, you got into gardening, it kind of gave you a new lease on life, which is very gratifying to hear. And weirdly enough, why I got into gardening was to get off my video game addiction, many years ago. And it was designed to kind of be the hobby outside of work. Of course, now it's become the hobby that is the work. And that
That's what I mean. Like a lot of times you start something and realize you're good at it or you really enjoy it. And there's that whole, if you love something, you never work a day in your life BS, which is not true. And it's very tempting to turn things into work.
That has taken quite a toll on me physically and mentally. So once I went full time on Epic, it was me and me. And then I hired an assistant. I hired a writer, Lauren, who's still on the team. She's our staff horticulturist now, almost 10 years later, which is really cool. And the team didn't get much bigger than that until literally 2021. I'm talking 10 plus hours a day minimum. Myself, the team, just grinding at it. And then once 2019 came around and we started offering products, it got even crazier because now you have a whole world of physical to deal with along with all of the content. And I think that something that a lot of people don't realize when you're on the other side of the screen watching a creator is we weren't just, or at the time I wasn't just a blogger, which is how it started, or just a YouTuber, or just a podcaster, or just a social media, whatever. I was doing all of those with myself and basically 2 people. So a daily podcast, 2 to...
This personally hits very hard because, podcast host and interviewer, researcher, etc. I edit the audio, I edit the video, I make the posts, I write the Substacks, I make videos for here. I do, my neuropsychology work and therapy work, also a parent and partner and all that stuff. These things really like just add on, and there's sometimes so much of it.
2 to 3 videos a week. Then the second channel, we were doing about 25 to 30 articles on the blog every single week. At our peak back then, at least. Now we're upwards of 100. But I don't think I realized the toll that could take on the mind and the body. Because I remember in 2020 or 2021, this is when things started to really crack, I think, for me, but I didn't realize it at the time. I had asked my girlfriend, I said, hey, what is stress? And she looked at me and she's like, what are you talking about? I'm like, no, what, like, how do you know if you're stressed? Like, how would you define it? And she was like, oh, you're doing that thing where you like pretend not to know a word, or I don't know. Sometimes I'll be like that. I'll be a little annoying, And I was like, no, I'm being serious. Like, how do you know in your body that you are stressed in the moment that you're stressed?
It's not a dumb question, right? Like, if you are familiar with your own emotions, you might take for granted how intuitive it is. But for somebody who maybe has always felt a certain way and has never felt any way else, right? Like they may not know what joy feels like or what sadness feels like, stress. Sometimes for people, literally part of the work is understanding what does it feel like in my body? When can I tell, kind of piecing the parts together that I'm feeling this way, looking at your journal entries or what's happened recently and then putting 2 and 2 together that, oh, I must be feeling stressed. So it's not a dumb question at all.
So she kind of talked me through it, which I'm very grateful for. And all of a sudden I realized I'd been deeply, chronically stressed for years. I just didn't know it. And so, in 2021, October, my grandfather died. I had to fly back from a conference I was at to try to be with him before he passed, and I was fortunate enough to be able to be there. But that was not a great experience in a lot of ways. I mean, I'm happy I was there for it, but I'm not happy in a sense that I had to witness it, but I kind of am because that's like part of life. But it was difficult, and I got COVID right after that. And then that began this journey, I'll call it that, of anxiety and panic. And I think some of you watching know that that's been a problem or a struggle for me over the last maybe year, but it started back then. My first panic attack was 2021, probably December, I would say.
So that makes a lot of sense for a lot of people. You may have some tendencies toward anxiety, maybe a bit high strung, maybe you've felt those physiological sensations. A panic attack being, racing heart rate, difficult to breathe, maybe numbness or tingling in your skin, a rush feeling in your head, just really strong muscle tension in the sense that you're out of control, that something is going really wrong here. A lot of people end up going to the hospital for them. But it makes a lot of sense for what he said, a grandparent dying, getting COVID right after, especially at a time when COVID was not very well controlled. We weren't really clear on how we should be treating it. A lot lot of people were dying, things like that. So bam, bam, bam. And there's often an activating event that kind of kicks off panic. And unfortunately for a lot of people, that develops into what you call panic disorder, where you have a panic attack and then you get so scared of the potential of having a panic attack that they're right there ready to go. So you kind of panic your way into panic. It's a shitty cycle. And I'm not sure if he falls into that cycle, but it is a typical scenario for somebody to kind of reach a breaking point and then have that first panic attack.
And lo and behold, that was also right around the time where Epic was getting a lot of attention, and we ended up raising a round of funding from some great investors. And so, there's some added stress to that. It changes kind of the trajectory of the company. But I started getting anxiety and panic attacks, and I didn't think too much of it because it didn't come that often. But it was like once I learned how to detect the stress signals, it all of a sudden became apparent I was pretty stressed. And it's kind of like cracking the door open, and then boom, like the Kool-Aid man comes through and like busts in.
Yeah. So like once you tune into what it is, right? There's sort of like a blissful ignorance sometimes that people don't even know they're having anxiety and panic. And then once you recognize what those symptoms are, then it kind of holds a magnifying glass up to them and it self-perpetuates. So yeah, it's often that pattern that I was talking about.
So that was the beginning. And then as you get into 2022, what started to happen is the team just grew really quickly. We had raised some investment capital, and it was time to get some help. It came to about November of 2022. Epic had gone from me and 4 people to me and 24 people, which is a 6 times increase in a year. And that year was crazy, man. So the sheer amount of things that were happening, I was like, it's like, people say, oh, I'm drinking from the fire hose. I was drinking from the ocean. Like the ocean was pouring itself into my mouth. I don't know how else to put it. But there was just so many new things coming at me that you don't even have a moment to step back and go, hey, like, what is this? Am I okay? Like, am I gonna survive? And so the panic increased a little bit then, but it actually got extremely bad beginning of last summer. So sometime around like spring of 2024, where I would say between spring of 2024 and today, I probably had 200 panic attacks, maybe, or more, maybe more. Like no joke, maybe more.
So I have to imagine this is probably diagnosably panic disorder, right? 200 panic attacks. So they're recurrent, they're happening all the time. And, without the proper lifestyle changes, treatment, sometimes medication, things of that sort, it can really just keep going. And they're not dangerous, like physiologically, they're not dangerous. A panic attack is not going to physically harm you. I mean, it's uncomfortable and it will cause, pain, discomfort, all of that, but it's not going to cause a major medical issue. It often feels like it though. But regardless, living your life that way, oh, that sucks. That sucks. It's miserable. And it makes you start to want to avoid things because you're afraid, like, what if I go do this thing, getting on camera, going and doing a talk, something like that. What if I have a panic attack while I'm there? And that makes you feel panicky. Yeah, heart goes out to anybody who has been through this. I do not have panic disorder. I have had panic attacks before. And so I understand what they feel like. I don't have that recurrent kind of issue, which I'm very grateful for because, man, it sucks.
And also that past summer, I had the cool opportunity to throw out the first pitch at the Padres game. One of the kids I grew up with ended up working for the Padres. He sent me a message. I'm like, you know what? I'm definitely going to do this. So it was August, a couple days before my birthday, and my girlfriend and I, we had planned this big thing where, all my friends and family wanted to come see me throw the pitch and enjoy a game together. Some of the team, Jacques came, Paul came. And that day, I was kind of anxious, but at this point, I had been anxious for months, like every second of every day, deeply anxious.
Okay, that said, I said, panic attacks can't hurt you, right? But they call it GAS, general adaptation syndrome. So like the state of being chronically stressed over time. Your body is not meant to stay in that state, and that can definitely have physical ramifications. For one, it's exhausting, but it can lower your immune system. It can lead to more chronic health things when you're talking about a sustained period like that. So this is probably just a culmination happening here.
To the point of like really not some great thoughts going through your mind.
Suicidality.
So I go out, I throw the first pitch, and I'm like, it was a good pitch. Maybe we'll put the clip up here or something, but it was a good pitch. Felt good. I'm sitting in the stadium with my friends and family and girlfriend at the time, and I am just not there. Like, I'm not even there. I'm mentally dissociated completely. Like, I think they call it DPDR, depersonalization, derealization.
Yeah, so depersonalization, derealization. So the feeling that you're not really in control of your body, it's kind of going on autopilot. Like you're there and you know that you're there, but it doesn't feel like it. And you're just watching, these things happen around you. If you've ever looked in the mirror for a really long time or in a certain state of mind and you're like, what am I looking at? This doesn't feel real to me. That's a form of that. Sometimes it also feels like you're watching yourself in the third person, like things are playing out around you, almost like the sense in like a movie montage where you're like walking through a crowd and it's like from the top and you're not from the first person view. It feels similar to that. Things that can simulate that feeling would be, like I said, looking into a mirror for an extended period of time, going to the edge of a skyscraper and looking up, and you get that sort of weird derealized feeling. Very common in anxiety. It can be also present very commonly in trauma, sometimes depression as well. In trauma, it's often a way to protect yourself. Your psyche protects itself from what you're going through. In anxiety, there's also a degree of that, right? Where it's like, if you're going to take the full force of all of this head on, that's going to be too much. And so in this moment, your brain kind of checks out. It's not an intentional thing, though some people can get there intentionally, but typically it's not an intentional thing. You just realize, hey, I'm disconnected here. And people are like, hey, are you okay? And you're like, am I even real right now? I don't know if I'm okay. I don't even know that I'm a person. So yeah, that's a very common thing, but very disturbing too.
Like, it's not like I was just zoning out. It's like I didn't feel like the entire situation itself was even real. Yeah. Like I thought it was a simulation or like fake or something. I don't know how to describe it. A lot of people give these sort of trite suggestions like, oh, you're not exercising enough. It's like, oh, you don't have a mission in life. It's like, okay.
Just go punch those people in the face.
I know a lot of people, I know many people dramatically more successful than myself, but I'm talking 100 millionaire type person or something like that. Not that that's what being successful means. I'm not trying to say that. I'm just saying, like, in the world of the material, they still deal with this. They still deal with this kind of stuff. I know people who are classically not super successful. They still deal with this stuff. It's not just about lifestyle,
Anxiety is equal opportunity. It doesn't matter what your station in life is, doesn't matter how much resources you have. It is something that can happen to anyone. And sometimes when you're in a really good place, it's even worse because that really messes with your self-concept where you're like, am I ungrateful? Why am I having such a hard time? I have everything in the world, et cetera, et cetera. So there are times where anxiety is very functional, very useful, and there are times when it isn't, and that can be very confusing.
But yeah, I sat there and I was like, what is going on? Next day, I was in the emergency room because I went to the gym and I checked my pulse. I went up 3 steps, literally 3 steps. I go, why am I out of breath? I check my pulse, and my pulse is like, instead of being like, bum, 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 it was like, but, but, but.
So an arrhythmia or atrial fibrillation maybe.
And I was like, dude, am I dying right now? I legit thought maybe I was like having a heart attack or something.
So common. If this has ever happened to you, don't be embarrassed. A lot of people, especially for first-time panic attack or just the worst one that they've had, heart attack, stroke, some sort of MS attack, people think that these things are happening to them because it really does generate significant physiological changes, arrhythmias in your heart, difficulty breathing, swimming vision, all sorts of things like that. It feels very scary. Like I said, not dangerous in itself, but it certainly feels like it.
And so I drove to the urgent care, and I go in and I'm like, hey, something's up with my heart. Like there's something wrong with me right now. And they check the pulse and they're like, well, your pulse is fine. I'm like, no, dude, check my pulse. Like check the pulse itself. And he goes, oh yeah, you have an arrhythmia.
That part right there sucks, right? Having to say, no, like literally look at this problem that I'm having. The medical gaslighting is an issue, and certainly worse for women, for people of color, people that are marginalized in whatever way. Good for him for advocating, but he may have in another world just been like, huh, okay, I guess I'm crazy, and then left and paid a big bill for it.
And then the doctor says, you have atrial fibrillation. And my heart sank because I started to cry, because I was crying a lot at this time in my life. But anyways, because my dad had that when he was 37, and at this time I was 37. And my dad, as some of you know, he passed at 44, and we think at least part of it was due to his heart conditions. So I got scared. And then they're like, you need to go to the ER. You don't need to go to the urgent care. You need to go to the ER. And so that's where I went. And those bastards try to charge me thousands of dollars to go 10 minutes up the road. So those of you who have had medical debt issues, I feel for you, because they tried to like collect some money on me. I'm like, guys, you can't bill me for this. I know my rights. Like, you can't bill me. Still dealing with that, but.
That's so fucking real. A lot of you guys may not live in America, in the United States, rather, and healthcare works different in different places. Here, you can have insurance. Like for me, I have insurance. I was paying for it out of pocket to the tune of like $1,200+ and then I got my employer to cover it, but it's still being paid for directly. Just, my employer is doing that for me, but it's a big chunk of change, and yet co-pays are expensive. Teeth and eyes, my two biggest problems, aren't covered in our normal medical insurance. And a lot of people are in positions where myself, Kevin, other people who have, things that are going well for them in some capacity, still it's like we have to decide, what's most important to take care of, because we can't take care of everything because we don't have infinite money. It sucks.
Anyways, they thought they were going to have to shock my heart back to normal, like put me under general anesthetic, put something down my throat and shock my heart back to normal.
Internal.
And I was like, dude.
Defibrillating, right? So shocking the heart. In the movies, they do that when a heart stops. When a heart stops, you can't shock it. I'm not a medical doctor, but this is my understanding of it. You have to have a like shockable rhythm. So in a regular rhythm, shocking it tries to set it back to that normal rhythm. When it's not pumping, that person is essentially dead, and you can't shock that back. So, yeah, they were looking at doing, I don't know what they would call it, internal defibrillation. Sounds very scary.
I don't want to go under general. Last time I had that was wisdom. I always think like if you go under general, you're just never going to wake up for some reason. Like it could happen. So I was lucky and I converted back.
Not common, but the anxiety brain doesn't know that.
Back to normal rhythm overnight. But ever since then, obviously, you have to take something to make sure that doesn't happen again. Atrial fibrillation, there's things you can do lifestyle-wise, but sometimes it's just genetic. You're more prone to it, and my family is prone to it.
One other thing to think about, I don't know if he's going to talk about this, but when you do have something like AFib that comes up in the context of anxiety, then you might be afraid to do things that raise your heart rate, right? So exercise and other things that could be beneficial for you, you might start to avoid those out of fear that you're going to get into that state again. And then again, that perpetuates the cycle.
So that started to happen. The sleep started to go away. The panic started to happen daily or multiple times a day. Obviously, it took a toll on pretty much everything in life. I mean, this is my garden. This is my house. At the time, I was living here with my girlfriend, and it's 998 square feet or something like that. It's under 1,000 square feet, guys. And there's a team here every day, every single day, from the early morning until at least the afternoon, if not later.
Work and life can get very blended, and I can imagine, in a relatively small space, always having people around. Work is going to always be at the forefront of your mind, and there's no way to really turn that off unless you leave, and that's what he's talking about.
So, I think a lot of creators would come on and just pretend like they still lived here type thing. I don't really want to do that. I want to always come at you guys with what's going on, and I figure we're at a much different chapter in the life of Epic than we were 5 years ago when I started with myself and really at the time 2 people buying this home. So I think I'll be moving somewhere else, and you'll see a lot of cool stuff happening. You probably even see more cool stuff happening on our channels because it'll be a little bit less kind of wishy-washy about, is this a house, is this an office? You know, it'll just be the Epic Gardening headquarters. Sometimes you gotta have that work-life balance and you gotta protect your sanity. I tried to hang on for as long as I could, but I could not.
When things are not working with anxiety, depression, whatever mental health issue you might have, and they're very sticky and you're doing your best, but it's just not budging, sometimes a big change is necessary, right? Moving away, making a big change to your lifestyle, something like that. In his case, he has the resources to move, right? I'm sure he's doing decently in terms of money department, like millions of subscribers, that equals some money, you know, product lines, etc. He's got a business to run, but I'm sure he can, you know, figure this out. Not everybody has that luxury, but if you do, it's great to be able to consider, like, what big change can I make? What line in the sand can I draw to try to get myself back on track?
It got bad enough for a while there where, yeah, I mean, I had people trying to like make sure I wasn't gonna like do something, you know what I mean? Compost myself.
Compost yourself.
So yeah, and when it gets to that point, you kind of have to make a change, right? So I figured I would come on and just tell you guys this, and if you have suggestions or maybe hopefully this can help you in some way, like if you've gone through something similar. But yeah, real look behind the scenes sometimes is useful, I think. So thanks for listening, guys. I will see you.
Cool. So video's done. That was really meaningful to see. I'm really proud of Kevin for making that and being honest about what he's going through. Like I said, I'm sure the comments are amazing on that post. A few things. One, very common scenario where there's this buildup over time. You know, there's that idea of frogs in boiling water, which my herpetologist patient of mine told me is not a real thing, but frogs in boiling water where the level of heat is raising gradually and they don't notice that they're in boiling water, right? So you don't notice the chronic stress that you're in until it gets pointed out from the outside somehow. Then something big happens, triggers a panic attack. The panic then triggers more panic attacks, oftentimes this avoidance cycle, and sometimes something needs to change. So that could be moving, that could be, you know, for some people say quitting alcohol or leaving a relationship, getting into therapy. So there are lots of really, really good therapies out there. Obviously, cognitive behavioral therapy is a common one, but others work as well. Anything that's causing you to learn some skills to regulate your body and also learn how to approach rather than avoid is going to be helpful. Medication, extremely helpful for anxiety. There are medications that you can take every day to lower your baseline level. There are also medications you could take when you're having a panic attack to help bring things down a few notches. Lots of stuff that can be done. I have lots of resources on my website if you want to check that out. But overall, I'm glad that he's talking about this, and it's about mental illness, right? Not about like mental wellness and just little tweaks here and there. It's about real stuff. And I think more people need to talk about that. So, you know, if you have any thoughts, please leave them down in the comments, and make sure you go check out, you know, Epic Gardener, Epic Homesteader, Epic Homestead, Epic Homesteading, whatever the hell the channel name is. I'll talk to you guys soon. Bye.